go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so my question is mostly for when people are scaling up and they're doing secondary suite conversions. How do we find out what we can do as entrepreneurs and business owners in this um, while scaling up, but keeping our costs within a certain range? Because I find this the range is just too big. So I have people who are doing SDUs in 70,000 in Ontario, and then I have quotes coming in with people doing it for up to 200,000, which is a huge gap. So what is different? And this is for, for an average basement suite unit with 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, and some renovations upstairs, basic changing the cabinets upstairs and on the main floor, the bathroom, the flooring, and the paint. So what is it that people are doing differently as a business owner to, get a handle on these costs so that it's not so high, so that we can keep scaling up, basically?
Yeah.
Do that, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's let's start with the shell of the property and what you're looking for from the shell. So if the upper unit is rent ready, so I have a thing that I call it, I renovate to rent. Okay. And it's very different than renovate to sell. It's very different than looking for the end buyer, the end person that's going to live in it and buy it for, or maybe potential investment. I'm looking at it for a tenant. So I renovate to rent. So is the kitchen okay? Can it be painted and new handles, new countertop? Are the cabinets okay? And so, there is one place to be able to say, a lot of people, those $200,000 quotes, they're like down to the studs, nothing can stay. And you're like, that's kind of extreme. So I don't go extreme in any of my stuff. I start to be able to put in what is, what needs to be done, what, can by choice be done. And if I'm attracting a certain clientele or the property is in a certain neighborhood, can I choose to do that renovation? Okay. So,
not to interrupt you, but it's important. That then brings us to the point that, you're demanding, you're trying to demand top rent, or you might be going in for the furnished suite rental. But then if you leave the older wooden look cabinets, are we going to be able to demand that, let's say, for example, $2,000 rent versus an $1,800 rent? So how do we determine that is another piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I myself like to attract a B to B plus tenant profile. I am not an executive tenant profile. I don't look to renovate for an executive A tenant profile. I look to be able to rent to families. So again, that's, defining your tenant profile will also help you define the neighborhoods that you can create those units in. Right. And so right off the bat, you're like, oh my God, there's a perfect house for a secondary suite, but it's in an A+ neighborhood. So you're already potentially paying a higher price. You have to renovate to be able to maintain the status of that unit. And so, yeah, your renovations are going to kind of creep up. Now, if you can get that property on an A+ neighborhood for a nice price that works for your model, then maybe you're okay to renovate a little bit higher to attract the clientele in that neighborhood. But don't attract and try and do a $2,000 a month renovation in a C neighborhood. So it's definitely where the property is, knowing your tenant profile. So again, we're B to B+ tenant profiles. That's like a beautiful school bus driver who has been a school bus driver for years, and his wife is a ward clerk at the hospital, full-time at the hospital for 10 years. Beautiful people in the community, never going to be buying their own house, but are B tenant profile. Nothing executive about them. Beautiful people. Dogs for durability. So you just kind of so I never look to attract that $2,000. I'm kind of like, if I can get the $1,750 and add on maybe, you have a dog, I'm not saying I charge for dogs, but I do add a premium to my units if they're pet friendly. I do add a premium to my units if it's a fenced backyard. I do add a premium to my units if it's air conditioning. And so it's not necessarily that I'm renovating to a $2,000 range. I am like, if I can keep it at my 1,700, but I can have a couple little premiums of things that people would like, then can I get that to the 1,750, 1,800?
Right, right.
So
I
to
see what
speak.
you mean.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So,
in these units, just on your model, because you do a lot of these, what are your basement suites renting for on average? I know you have them all over Ontario, but
yeah.
just
So
typically.
I would probably say 1,800 is up, like 17 to 1,800 up,
Mhm.
14 to 1,500 down.
Okay. Okay.
And
And this is
down depends on, and this is another cool part about your renovation cost. Can I get 3 bedrooms down there? Most people have it in their head a 3+2. Now I won't do it for any less than a 2 bedroom in the basement. So I won't do a renovation if it only gets me 1 bedroom.
absolutely.
That's just, it's not cost effective for the entire legalization to be able to create a 1 bedroom, at
Yeah.
least in my model.
Yeah.
So if it's a minimum 2, but I have been known to remove a chimney out of the center of the house to allow the hallway. I have been known to create 2 smaller bedrooms and a larger bedroom, still to get 3 bedrooms in the basement. So I do try, if possible, to
Yeah.
create a 3+3 bedroom duplex, if not larger. So
Yeah.
I also have been known to change a dining room. So you know, some of those like kitchen, dining room, big living room areas.
Yes.
I don't get extra value for those. So I have been known to be able to create a 4th bedroom up
Yes.
front.
Yes, we do the same thing, exactly
Perfect.
same thing. And another thing that we are now doing is, which has added a bit to our cost, but it gives us more square footage. We are taking out the furnaces and the water tanks, and we're putting in a boiler system. So you need a much, much smaller space for a boiler system because it's just, you know, a wall unit. And it's one piece, and then you don't need those 2 huge furnaces and 2 huge water tanks, and that has helped us get our 3rd bedroom space as well.
Okay.
And the
We
same
don't
thing,
we don't
dining.
have to put 2 furnaces. So again, that's a municipality thing. And I think that's a
Yeah.
great point to be able to point out, is be able to say that, you know, this is all very municipality driven, but in our municipality, so Aurelia, Barrie, Midland, Hamilton, Kingston, you do not have to put 2 separate heating sources.
Okay.
That's just what it's like in those municipalities. Yeah, you're right. There are some that say no, has to be a separate heating source.
Right.
So there's a cost factor right there. If it
Yes.
ain't broke, don't,
Can fix
in
it.
my model, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mhm.
So you know that, you know, 15 to 20-year-old furnace, in my mind, I know that it's a 15 to 20-year-old furnace. In my mind, I know that if we go to refinance in 5 years and we pull out a chunk of money, then I can choose to allocate a new furnace at that time, or create a reserve fund that's large enough that makes sense, that
Right.
we hold the reserve fund for the possibility of that furnace to be redone. But to be able, so it's no, I'm not saying that, I keep my renovation costs, under 100,000. 80 to 90 is a nice price for me. Okay.
I love that. I want to do
Okay.
that. That's why I wanted to, do this to
Yep.
get tips and suggestions. And
So, but I don't replace furnaces unless they need to. So somebody would say, well, I'd rather just replace everything at the time of the renovations. I get
Mhm.
that. So then, so you're spending now you're at 85, 90, maybe you're at 100, 105, whatever that is, for the extra 5,000 for the furnace. It's a great time. It makes sense. Except if you're trying to keep your costs down, maybe do that upon a refinance, or, just kind of acknowledge there's a lot of people that just replace things because they just want it replaced and they don't want any headaches from the tenants. But reality check is, you're going to have headaches from the tenants no matter what. There's always going to be something. We had a brand new unit and then the sewer line went out the front. So like, you can't foresee that. Or should you be like, oh, also for every property, I'm going to waterproof and I'm going to do the new sewer lines and I'm going to do new heating sources, windows, roof. It's going to be a brand new house. And then you go, yeah, and you're going to do one of those and you're not going to be able to get all your money back out. And the model doesn't work.
Correct, correct. And just in the case where you were saying where you leave one furnace, so what do you do for, when the basement's colder? Sometimes in the one furnace properties, I've heard, we've not done that. We've always had two or the boiler systems now. But what do they do? Do you have a separate heating source, a radiator or electric, or what do they do?
You know what? So I think the thermostat is upstairs for both units. There have been other times that he, and then I just say, just kind of get along, and they can open and close the ducts or the filter, the vents as needed. There are times that we'll put like baseboard backup in the basement. But you know what? We haven't had not a ton of issues for considering the amount that we've done with the tenants, discussing the water. I've never heard from them about hot water tank not having enough. We rent. I like renting. We make sure that they're up to date, and the Reliance comes and puts in a new one. And we've never had one that there's complaints that there's no water left between the two.
Is that one water tank too?
One water tank, one furnace.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And do you just add the utilities in the rent, or they split the in your?
So it's a 60-40 split. Okay. And so we'll kind of say, okay, we will estimate $300 for utilities. Your portion is $160. Your portion is $140, we'll say. And so the rent is $1,700 plus $160, or right, whatever that number is. And your rent is $1,400 plus $140. And then every 6 months we accumulate the bills and be able to say, okay, actually it's only been $250 a month, and so we'll give them a credit off of their $160 for the next month, and vice versa off of the $140. If it happens to be more, then we can charge them for that. It's not too often that we've had to go back to any tenants to be able to say that it's more than what we anticipated. We do pay water, sewer. It is one of those costs that go on to the tax bill. So we just take that bill on. I get it. Not everybody wants to, but it's just one of those things. It's $100 is what I estimate. We pay water, sewer. So yeah, it's not a cost I try and distinguish who's had more showers, who's flushed the toilet more, things like that.
Okay. All right. No, that makes sense. That's some good suggestions. So so HVAC and main floor don't fix what's not broken. And what else in the basements? How else can we save? So what about the windows? So usually it's an older bungalow, right? So they have the smaller windows. Do we leave them because you just need not usually, but in different places?
Egress.
Yeah, one egress, same in Ottawa. So do you just change that one, or do you change the others, or? So you don't.
I mean, there are a lot of those basement bungalows that have like single pane, old wood windows. Yeah. Yes, they all need to open. They all need to be functionable. I don't want any water or moisture coming in those, like no chance of anything like that. So, I mean, but there's a lot of these grandma bungalows that they've looked after all the windows, and the roof is good. The heating systems are good. So like a lot of times you're going to get bones that are really quite nice. I actually saw your last picture of the bungalow. I think it was your son was like in front of it doing some fun things.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful house. I love the bright windows on it. But, the windows are probably fine. You don't need to do them. And it's okay to put it in your mind. Okay, so the windows are going to be, we're not going to be shocked and shaken if we replace one every year, or, start to replace them in 3 to 5 years, or one at a time, whatever it is. But we overthink that stuff. So you know what? Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Again, they have to be open. They have to open. We don't want any drafts, things like that. The front door I typically would replace because, it's just nice. They're quite inexpensive from Home Depot, and away we go. So there's really not much that's ever custom in our units though, as well. So, you go in and it's a standard door, standard 6-panel door, bedroom doors, standard faucets from Moen, so that they're, all the parts are free to be able to replace.
Great deals
Yeah.
on that, by the way, for Black Friday and upcoming Boxing Day. Stock
Yeah.
up for all of us.
Yeah, so only, I mean, and again, I love where your mindset is, because you're in growth mode and you want to scale this business. But, caution on collecting too many that
Mm.
you are now have, we did that with our electrician. And I mean, again, we made the decision, but he was like, hey, smoke detectors are X amount of dollars off. I want to say it was like $25 a unit, right?
Mhm,
So we
mhm.
bought big amount of I'm like, I got $5,000 held up right now on smoke detectors. Took us 2 years to be able to do it. And the smoke detectors were defective. They were like, there was newer
Oh,
ones.
God.
Now you need the 3-in-1, the strobe. And
Yeah.
I was like, this was silly of me to have thought that I was saving money, and it's now sitting on a credit card or cash out of my circulating account for me to be
Right.
able to hold too much. So, if
Yeah.
you're going to use it in the next 3 projects,
Yeah.
by all means,
Yeah,
go
that's
for it.
why we have, so we are closing on 4 projects now and 3 more in the next month or two. So for 7 properties, we know we need these things and we
Yes.
know details are coming up. So just for these, I think it's a great idea, but you're absolutely right. Not that, oh, by year end, I want to do 100 units, so let me get 100. No, no, no. That would be overkill, and you're absolutely right. It'll just block my card and I need the money now.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah.
One more point I wanted to bring up. I know your answer almost. I can hear it in my head, but I'm still going to put it out there because there'll be people thinking about it. So, back entrance or creating a side entrance, existing back entrance, right? You don't have to spend any money to create it. Awesome, love it. But there are people who say, okay, so someone living downstairs is going to have to walk over the side, then go from the back. Why don't we just create a side entrance that's more convenient or looks better? Thought.
Yeah. So I go with, what do I need a permit for? What's the least invasive thing for me to be able to get in there and do? And you know what? Like, you could take a house and you can make it into the Taj Mahal, and you can do anything you want to it. But we're here being very strategic investors that are saying, what's existing, what can we keep, and what's the minimal amount of work. Don't get me wrong, I go into those basements and I'm just like, this is perfect. There's a back door coming in, there was a side door, there was a patio door upstairs and another side door. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is brilliant. The windows were high, but I underbid. I overbid over asking, but I missed out on this property. But when I walked into it, it was glorious. So you're going to have some properties that you're going to walk into that are glorious. And then you're going to have other ones that you're like, am I trying too hard to make this work? And
Right.
if you're trying too hard, then, like, you can do anything. You can open concept anything. It just takes some beams and some structural, whatever, dollars. You can, sure, you want a new kitchen? No problem. Dollars. Sure, you want a dishwasher in the existing kitchen because it doesn't have it? No problem. Dollars. And those dollars add up, and they add up, and they add up, and they add up. And so the conversation started with us going, how do we keep our budget down? And so
Yeah.
I think you can go into it and say, what is my ARV? What's my after repair value? And if I buy for X and add, $100,000 max,
Mhm.
where does my ARV stand? So for us, on a continual refinance basis, we need our ARV to be higher than our purchase plus renovations. Well,
Yeah.
by how much, Mandy? Right? So
Right.
if the ARV is not going to change, so you're buying for 300 and your ARV is 450, that's a great lift. You got
Mhm.
$100,000 reno. Well, how do you
Mhm.
make that a better deal? Well, can you buy it for 290?
Mhm.
Okay, so you can start to negotiate down that way. Your other one is, can I get a higher ARV? Well,
Mhm.
typically the market's not going to be, you're not able to push that higher ARV. So your next factor that you're able to control is, how much are my renovations, which is where we started with our conversation. So then you go, if I've allowed 100,000, but I want this to be a better deal, how can I shrink my renovation budget? Can I
Mhm.
leave the kitchen and paint it? Can I just paint the doors and the trim, but leave the, it's all brown underneath? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. A lot of times bathrooms are good. They're not perfect. They're not tiled, but there's nothing wrong with them. Leave them. Leave them. Make sure the faucet, nothing leaks. Toilets are, easy for $200 to replace, but don't overthink it. So you're trying to reduce your renovation budget without reducing the value that you're adding to the property. So that side entrance, I've never done it. I have seen it, and I know that when they did it, it was an appropriate, easy, like no structural anything. It just kind of went into the side of the door, and they had to build like a little platform to go up to the door. And then the front door was very specific to the basement, with an egress window, and then the back patio door and this new side door was for the upper unit. So I think it's a cost factor.
It is. Yeah, it is. And that's the thing, right? You said it, everything is dollars. So every little thing adds up. And that's why it's easy to get carried away. But, in this time where prices are going up and people are bidding on properties, the more people are coming in the business, and contractors are bidding more than what it should cost, even them, with a good profit margin. It's hard to keep your eyes on the price. So I think these tips are very good, and they're good reminders for all of us in the business, as well as people trying to get in, to try and remember. So
yeah. One other thing, that we're dealing with this. I'll say dealing with, because that's just a nice way to be able to put it. So we're in Kingston, and we had an appraiser come in. So keeping in mind, they just opened up the legalization of secondary dwelling units in July. Okay. So brand new to the city. We had some of the first closed building permits on these legalized secondary suites, and we're in the refinance process. So we have an appraiser right now who gave us a very low appraisal. And he was like, well, there's no difference between legal and not legal. So let's just think about that for a minute. Let's just say that you did everything that you needed to do on that property, and you have totally legalized it. And then a third party appraiser comes in and says, there's no difference. He's not caring if you put 2 furnaces, 2 hot water tanks, like he's not looking at any of that. And he's comparing it to a non-legal property that's sold 3 blocks over. You've just put in all this money, and there's nothing that can come back and say, whoops, sorry. So your 450 is now only 400. You don't have anywhere near the lift that you did before. So, they're always, my mentor around here, we've constantly been asking ourselves, okay, what are the comparables? And, is it a 3+3 bedroom? Is it 3+2, a 2+2? Tell me a little bit about it, because we're making sure that we've got those comparables for the type of properties. So if you over renovate your single detached units, or what do you call them? Secondary dwelling units. You might be in a league of your own. And, so if your goal, again, we're talking about a scalable model, being able to do this. And maybe that's your one-off, and you're like, nope, that's going to be for my great grandchildren. Perfect. Do everything to it, over renovate it, because.
Oops. Did we lose each other? Yeah.
Oh,
there. I'm back. Yeah.
There you are. So yeah, just, don't be shocked and shaken if your after repair value doesn't catch up to your purchase plus renovations.
Yeah. No, we saw this earlier on in Ottawa as well, when it was relatively newer, because many of us are we are leading the pack, right? And we are the examples that people will use maybe a year or 2 or more down the road. So we take the hits as well. That means, so like what, last year we did an STU project on. It was very interesting. I mentioned it to you before. It was a side-by-side duplex, and we severed it, sold one side as is for a great price, and then the other side we converted into 2 units. Now, there was no such unit, like a semi-detached SDU, comparable in the market at the time. So the appraiser, even though he was an experienced appraiser with SDUs, the few that have been done in the city by them, he was like, there's nothing I can compare it to. I can only compare it to detached ones, but this is completely different. So he had to come up with a number on his own. And, we gave him a whole list of what we had done with expenses and pictures and videos that I love taking. So he saw all of that. And luckily it came out to a number that made sense still for us. But people who are new in this, they might not do that. And they might just take what the appraiser says at face value, and that's it. But I think
Yeah.
being prepared at that stage as well, it's very helpful for people who are doing SDU units.
Yeah, and it's, what's the difference between the cost of the kitchen, the cost of a new kitchen and the value of a new kitchen? So somebody will say, oh my God, I spent $20,000 on this kitchen. Perfect. Let's
Yeah.
stay there for a second. Did you just increase the value of your house by 20, or did the value go up higher than the cost? And
Yeah.
so, you want to make sure that if you're investing $100,000, that that the value of those renovations is more than the cost.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't follow that little bit of a rule.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So yeah. Yeah, and other than that, I mean, time is money. So
Yes.
you don't want, we would, gosh, how much time have you spent at Home Depot, at Rona, wherever your thing is? I hated the amount of time I was spending at the store. So when I got a project manager, now my project manager was spending time at the store, waiting in line, ordering, needed another part, needed another part, needed another part. So how, your checklists and being able to say, okay, you can only go to the store twice a week. So make a list on the wall, or I will come over, or I'll have somebody come over, once a week to be able to go to the store to be able to pick everything up that you need, just so that it saves time from them going to the store and back, and going to the store and come back. And you're making sure that the efficiencies of your team, you're like, you didn't need 2 people to go pick up an extra 5-gallon thing of paint. Somebody could have stayed there and done some cleanup, swept the floors, cut, do some cut-ins, hung the doors, whatever that is. You're just making sure that there's efficiencies in your team as well, so that you're not paying extra people money, labor, just to be doing silly little things like that.
Absolutely. And time is money, like you said. And especially when you're scaling up and you have more projects, you have 10 projects going on and everybody needs one tiny thing.
You could have, you'd have 10 project manager, 10 people at the store at the same time. You're like, what the heck, right?
Yeah.
It's also very efficient as you get more. I mean, again, you're right up your alley, but being able to just transfer crews from one job to the next. So there's really no downtime of jobs. And, so the electrician's in there and he doesn't want to be tripping over anybody else. You're able to share them over. So there's no real, people standing around while they, just to be able to keep them there and keep them employed. You're able to make sure that you're like, okay, just so you know, when you have downtime, go outside and clean up the debris, go outside and rip out the landscaping. You almost have the nice weather jobs, the bad weather jobs, the labor jobs, the standing around jobs, everybody has to work together on these jobs, so that, at any point somebody could be like, well, I'm done and I'm waiting for the whatever to arrive. I can go and look at these lists and go outside and do one of these jobs that's just kind of hanging around. So really making sure that you got people who are self-starters. And next thing you know, you've just gotten something done on the side. Well, somebody was waiting around. They didn't need 4 guys to do it. So one got sent out to do whatever, and now it's done.
Yeah, that's a great tip as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to, I'll turn off my recording here. Yes.